successfully isn't easy. It takes bravery from both the architect and the client. A bravery the two brothers I'm about to meet are going to test. One is an artist, the other an architect. Both will be the builder. And both have very vivid imaginations. 4 years ago, Sculptor Ben Gilbert returned from living overseas to his hometown of Yackandandah in Victoria's northeast. And in his search to find somewhere to live, he stumbled across a 100-year-old abandoned sawmill, somewhere he could continue his large body of civic sculpture.
Well, when I purchased the property, it had an operable sawmill. We weren't allowed to use it, but you could cut giant logs here and things. So it's been, as a site, it's been a sawmill for over 100 years.
Traditionally, sawmills like this were never owned, but leased from the Crown. So buying it meant wading through a lot of red tape. But not only was Ben successful, he managed to convince the council that this industrial zone block needed a residential structure, a caretaker's residence, that could perhaps one day double as a civic space to show off his sculpture.
And now we're going to make a house for the sculpture studio. And my brother, who's finished studying architecture, he wants to come and build it. So we've sort of designed it, his major scheme, and then he's allowed me to have some input around the edges here and there, and we'll see what happens.
I want a massive rock on wheels, like a ton, like that big rock. At the front.
Ben's brother Chris is an architect, working with a successful firm for 5 years. But somehow Ben has persuaded him to put that on ice and try something very new.
We argued and argued over how to go about this building, and several detailed schemes were, worked through, and he sat here sweating it out on the computer, just smashing out and really listened, and then he came back with that plan, and I can see how it can be a lovely cafe, it can be a gallery, it can be a designer house, and at the same time blend in with an old industrial chic, someone's called it.
Hey, Chris. How you going? Pleased to meet you. What a great shed you've got here.
Yeah, it's a nice old beast.
It's a ripper.
Yeah.
How many years have you been thinking about doing this? Since you bought the site, have you been thinking about living here?
Yeah. I was going to put a little perch in the tower. So there's this tower extraction unit, I thought, oh, that'll do for me, I was going to build in that, but Chris has talked me around to having a slightly more respectable presence in the planet.
OK, so and you live here full-time, Ben?
Yeah.
And Chris, how much time do you spend up here?
2 or 3 weekends a month. Yeah. So probably more now that we're going to start building a house together.
So what's your role in this house project?
I designed it with Ben about probably 12 months ago now, and now the time's come where he's got enough of a foundation to start construction.
Right.
So I thought I'd come out here and take a bit of a sabbatical from my office job.
Mate, what a good brother. He's giving up work, he's designed the house, he's come out to help you build it.
Yeah, he's going to learn to make things.
Oh, so it's a trade-off. You've got to show him how to make things.
Oh, he's got a good start, but I think it'll serve him well in his profession.
Yeah.
It's a unique opportunity that I've got to make something with someone that's so talented and be so involved in the process.
But I partially want to build it because it's an opportunity to give him the platform to not have a bull-headed client. And what happens, with an education in architecture, recent graduate, what happens when you apply that and you give it some skills behind it, and just go for it? You know,
How good are you?
That's it.
Man, you're the perfect brother. So are you.
He's my hero. He's my hero. So
It's this unique brotherly bond that's led to a largely unrestrained design process. Cantilevering over the edge of an old dam, it'll be well and truly anchored there by what's going on it. Enormous 1-ton concrete blocks, adding an incredible sense of solidity and permanence. They'll frame up the very simple floor plan with its 1 bedroom, the maximum allowed with the industrial zoning. And Chris has responded to this minimal size with a wonderfully innovative design. Shifting walls opening to reveal lines of sight all the way through to the courtyard beyond. A capitalising of space that will be continued in every direction. Large sliding doors will make the deck feel part of the living area. And even the roof will move, with a retractable 14-metre section that will allow for maximum solar penetration during the winter months. Finally, the exterior will be timber-clad, with yet more moving elements. Sheer invention hidden behind a sleek, modernist facade.
So you're going to build it yourselves?
yeah.
Building it all ourselves. Everything from the structural steel down to the very smallest detail of the door hardware.
So because you're doing that, you've got the trade contacts.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that going to help you with the budget? And what is the budget?
I'd be surprised if it costs more than 200,000.
That's cheap.
Very surprised.
All up.
Very cheap.
Could easily be half that. Easily. Yeah.
It's still a very cheap house. I mean, you know, Chris, $200,000. If a client came along to you and said, I've got 200 grand, what would you tell them?
You're dreaming. And I think architects aren't given a chance to experiment like this very often. So I think it's a great opportunity to get in there, get hands-on and really research or learn by making. Yeah.
Absolutely. Great opportunity. I mean, I'm quite envious, actually.
Yeah, it'll improve the field of architecture if more of them have hobbies and which I think historically.
Absolutely. The craft I can see you're going to put into it. Just look at the bits and pieces you got here. I've got high expectations, guys.
Oh dear.
So have I.
Oh dear.
Just having a house will be a new concept to Ben. His current accommodation reflects the past restrictions of industrial zoning. His bedroom is quite literally a few rooms repurposed from the rear part of the workshop, with a living kitchen space that I think you could call open plan. It doesn't give much away as to what to expect, other than Ben is not one to comply with social norms, and clearly doesn't demand much beyond pure shelter. But what they plan is so much more than that.
I'm keen to see how it's going to actually be. Like, you can have ideas about something, it's not until you build it and it proves itself over time of being used that I'll be able to reflect on it properly. But I can't comprehend what it'll be like to live in a building that's dedicated to my life. Like, that's a house. It's going to be fun.
Even with their minuscule budget, Ben and Chris still intend to push the envelope as far as they can on this project, which means very little is tried and tested. Starting with the material at the heart of their idea, which is an anomaly in itself. Two words that rarely sit together: recycled concrete.
So these are your moulds, Brendan.
Yeah, Ben. So these are the moulds, what we do with our leftover concrete that comes back off jobs if people have over-ordered.
Yep.
It's a quick way for us to be able to get the concrete off the truck so we can get it loaded for the next one.
Okay. And there's a couple of layers. Does that make much difference to the strength of them?
It doesn't make any difference to the strength as long as on the hook that we've got it nicely buried into the first layer, and that'll act as an anchor for the second.
Made from whatever's left in the truck at the end of the job, this is essentially waste concrete. The massive blocks created are more normally used by farmers to build retaining walls, and at $22 each, they're certainly cheap.
I love the idea that someone else has paid for my concrete. Because this is the leftovers, so...
Yeah, that's right.
You know?
Well, it's it is a recycled product, really. They all get this love and attention.
Oh, I bet. Farmers demand it.
Yeah, that's right.
It's an exciting use of what is such a basic thing, and one that should fit well into the industrial nature of the sawmill. But more than that, it fits with Ben and Chris's entire approach. A unique aesthetic at a very low cost. They are certainly different, if a little rough.
They're not too bad. Good straight bricks.
They're not straight at all. I like their mass. Got a nice presence, and that's what I wanted in a building. Yeah. I hope Chris likes them. They're a bit heavy to return. We might have wanted them a bit straighter, but it's obviously an old mould, and this is what we got. Awesome. Watch me tree run! Ah!
With the concrete blocks delivered, the construction of Ben Gilbert's experimental house in Yackandandah is fast rising out of the ground. And as Ben and Chris have never actually built before, they've enlisted friends to help. A bunch who bring with them their own unique set of skills.
You're the one that really knows what's going on.
Sort of. It's not too bad. A little running.
A little running? Are you a concreter?
No, I'm not.
You're a bricklayer?
I'm not either.
What's your expertise?
Trapeze.
Trapeze?
Yeah.
Well, that's handy. Very handy.
Isn't it?
And they've called on you to check the mortar.
That's right.
Learning as they go for this type of construction is actually understandable, because in fairness, there is so little modern precedent in building with these unwieldy objects.
Well, is it hard to keep level? Because they look a bit wonky.
Yeah, they dance around. We've got some little offcuts of wood we jam in there.
To try and level it up.
Yeah,
Okay.
as we go. But it doesn't... It'll be interesting at the top, once we get 5 high.
How straight it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a sculptor and maker, Ben is far more used to working with this big picture approach, adapting materials as he goes. But for Chris, an architect who spent 5 years studying precision and detailing, it's a brave and interesting choice.
These blocks get me a little bit twitchy. I can't control them. In CAD, you can zoom into 2000% and really accurately see what's going on, and then you get into the real world and all of a sudden you're just like, well, our medium is all over the place.
With no two blocks the same, the only consistency is their difference. But then again, I think that's what Ben and Chris are actually enjoying the most.
All those files, Ben, you just throw it on.
Yeah.
And this is a particular technique developed in this part of the country.
Yackandandah toss.
And the toss. Oh, it's got legs. I think you'll see the rest of the industry pick up on this.
Yeah. Every child under the age of 10 will be building their own mansion.
This is where we're going to get the wood for your house, Ben. This is stringy bark that was brought down in a massive storm we had here at Yak.
The walls will be left in their raw state, but Ben has decided to splash out on some warmth for the interior. The timber throughout the house will come from their local Yackandandah forest.
This log here, that's a perfect log for me to mill up. And then we'd cut it into 3.6 metre lengths, of which we'd probably get 1, 2, maybe 3 out of. Yep.
Being naturally fallen timber, it's pretty much as sustainable as it gets. You'd think it's almost the perfect scenario. But that all depends on how deep you want to get.
It's a little bit emotional to see, hear the trees. I know they've been blown over in the storm and that's a good use of material, you know, if you have to get trees from somewhere. I could have built without all of these trees. And when I see it like this and knowing it's going to take at least 30 of those, you know, and they've stood here and for 50 or 60 years, and we're just chopping them up and putting them in the house. Like, is that entirely necessary, you know, just to make it pretty, lining the roof and the floor, just because I don't want to walk on concrete? Yeah, there's something unfair. You know, here it is, it grows in the forest, falls in the forest. We're taking those nutrients away from the forest, and I might have to plant some trees or something to make myself feel better.
Rightio, Benny, that one goes over there.
This red stringy bark will be one of the 3 separate species to line both the floors and the ceiling. An extravagance of $15,000, putting a dent in their tiny budget. But something that should help relieve the utilitarian aesthetic of this monumental structure. Currently looking more like an old ruin than a new house. With the walls up, the boys are getting their teeth into something that should be more precise. The structural steel.
To me a bit. Yep.
But when I say precise, its implementation is once again incredibly loose and largely undocumented.
Oh, mate.
Which is just as well as Ben and Chris are changing it all anyway.
We originally had 3 panels of glass here, were independent doors. And then being out here on site, we decided we'd really like for this whole section to move as one unit off into the courtyard. So you could open this whole space out and effectively have the deck as your living space.
Deciding to join all the windows together to create one single sliding door is what you'd call a reactive approach. On-the-fly changes, normally made at the pencil and paper stage, are here being made on site.
We're going to call the engineer and see if we can make the sliding section of the roof a structural element by using bearings that lock into each of the beams on each side of me. So if that works, we can get rid of that beam altogether. In theory, it might.
It's a level of flexibility that could only be tolerated between 2 brothers. Changes that require major structural consideration, not to mention a fair amount of deconstruction.
It's nice that it's not so much just about the production of the drawn work. It's about, still has that excitement of creating and designing on the fly. So it's got that energy. It's not just building a stagnant thing. I think we did well, all things considering. I mean,
You got a tan.
yeah, got a tan. Looking good, bro. Killing it.
This project is becoming a design playground for these 2 very creative minds. And for Chris, it's certainly a world away from his training, and probably even further away from his time working as an architect. Going out on his own like this really is taking a path less travelled.
Just making something with your brother is exciting, and making something, you know, with your own hands is really exciting. So I think it's just an extension of like our childhood, making things in the shed, and we were really excited about that. And I feel the same way about this. Like, yeah, there's a new happiness I find in actually making something physical that I didn't feel the whole time practicing as an architect. Working without drawings is a new thing, and I wouldn't do it if Ben wasn't as good as he is. If it was a normal situation, client-architect situation, I think it would be impossible. Yeah.
When Chris says he's working without drawings, this is what he means. There's almost no detail. I mean, I can hardly find dimensions. And I think this is symbolic of the relationship of these 2. There's a lot of trust, but nothing on paper. It's sort of like they've met in the middle. The architect throwing away procedure to be more like his artistic brother, and Ben shifting from sculpture to building. How sustainable this is, I really don't know. But there'll come a point, and soon, where final decisions have to be made. And the answers? Well, they're not in here. By the spring, they do have some shelter with the roof on. The walls and the main section of that roof are the only parts that remain from the original plans, as the need to learn, change and innovate continues to consume them.
So he's on his way?
Yep, 9:30.
9:30, right.
Ben's girlfriend, Tiana, will also live in the house. And now she's on site most days, it gives her a unique perspective on the delicate balance between the two brothers, trying to teach each other their very different skill sets.
Not too much. I just needed the ends.
Filler.
Okay, you can add some fill if you want, but if you've done that one, the heat can pull that up.
Yeah.
So we would have done in the centre, not at the corner, because the whole thing will be pulling that way. But it's all heavy enough. Like.
Well, I think Ben is still, you know, he can do the work with his own hands, and Chris has the theory and the knowledge, but he's just learning to use a lot of these tools and so on. So Ben tries to mentor him, but Ben being a strong character, it might not come across as quite mentoring. So there's a little bit of, I know, yeah, it can be quite, probably quite difficult.
Yeah, that's it. Lovely. Damn, I bet you wish you'd done that first time.
And they're not just generating ideas, but incredibly taking on the building of every single element themselves. That includes all the hardware. Like this track for the 1-ton sliding window. And the more they make, the more playful they're getting. Like their latest decision to make the entire bedroom window open out as another enormous door.
Yep.
Yep. How is... I'll come and get the level onto it?
Yep.
You don't want it done up too much before... Yeah, it's still pretty good. Jump on. Oh! It excites me that I'll be able to play on it. The bedroom wall moves out of the way.
It's the kind of thing I wish I could do when I was practicing as an architect, but you couldn't because you're restricted by budget and a willingness by builders to step outside of the conventional techniques or wisdom.
Yeah, trial something, because it's a dirty big door.
Yeah, and we didn't know it was going to work, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
Designing and making is usually a far more linear process. One follows the other. But on this project, it's all happening at the same time, and there doesn't seem to be any end in sight. The latest redesign, making the door on the deck slide in the opposite direction, is a process that requires yet more undoing, removing elements from what is already a minimal structure.
Oh, you got it, have you?
Structurally, the weight of the door is going to be, well, the weight of the flashing or eave will be the hardest part. And also aligning everything more than anything else. Just because we're making everything ourselves. It's just a big prototype. So I'm hoping it goes to plan.
To date, Sculptor Ben Gilbert's workshop come house in Yackandandah has been a constant process of invention, adaptation and development. Every concept of building and indeed living has been challenged. And even as they move into their interior fit-out, it's no less adventurous.
This is beautiful too.
That's from next to the prison in Beechworth. Big redwood tree that had a disease and had to come down.
That is the most gorgeous timber I've seen in a long time.
Not when we're finished with it.
We're going to put a blowtorch to it.
Why don't I measure next to them?
Ben and Chris bring very different attitudes to problem solving, which leads them to push each other, an approach that runs throughout. They did succeed in making the massive door on the deck slide in the opposite direction. In fact, it was so successful, they now can't resist making it slide even further.
So, sliding track in here, door comes right down to here.
It's going to go all the way to the end, actually. We've got a little bit more of the track to put in.
Why send it all the way down to the end of the building?
Because Chris didn't like the line stopping there, because it only needs to go back to there, you know, to be open. And then it goes halfway across the courtyard. But then the courtyard, or the track under the door is a point of interest for your eye to rest on halfway through that courtyard deck. So you have to continue
which is not zen enough. So the track goes all the way through to the end.
Yep.
Yeah.
And this column gets cut out because it was breaking up the courtyard.
Yeah, this volume of space.
Yep.
Yeah.
Void.
Yep. It was being destroyed by this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost went with it there. Okay.
This pursuit of purity, whilst maintaining adaptability, clearly takes a fair bit to get right. There is still a lot of undoing here. But so far, no one seems tired of this method.
4:30, almost 5.
And the payoff is a house that's as far from convention as you can get. Even the few partition walls that should be straightforward are getting covered not with plasterboard, but brass sheeting.
It's quite, it's actually thicker than I expected for 0.8.
0.3, isn't it?
0.3, is it? Jeez, check that out. You can see, get a reflection of the view.
Chris has gone Lux, because I had a very reasonable solution for the brass wall, and that was a sulfate-treated mild steel, which I've done a lot of for my sculpture works. And to then step onto brass, which is quite a precious material, I just thought it's going to be bonkers, you know, the look of this. But there's no paint per square metre. It's comparable with plaster, you know. So is it luxury? Well, no.
The lustre of brass sheets will radically alter the interior feel and experience of this house. But unlike most features, this idea has a rather grand precedent.
I like the concept of Ben's house to a degree is to be a civic space where people will come and exchange ideas. Whether that's going to happen or not, I'm unsure. But I guess that was one of the original concepts. So to use materials that are seen in the civic realm is kind of appropriate. Ben took a little bit of convincing. I think the mirrored effect that you see in the art centre here, he was concerned that that would be too much to live around constantly. So the brass that we have is a little more, it's not quite so mirrored. And also, as Ben touches it and the house is used, it will show those areas and patina and kind of take on a story or a character of its own.
Embedded stories and character are in this house's DNA. It's either from the process or it comes inbuilt. Like Ben's red stringy bark timber, the use of which Ben actually had to negotiate with the man who milled it, Dennis.
It will be fine on a ceiling, but I really don't want to see him use structurally unsound boards or dangerous boards on a floor. So we've reached a compromise where he's going to use most of it on the ceiling.
Yep.
Then he's not going to let me into the part of the house where he's used the other stuff.
He's a man who cares about his timber. He wants to see it. He does.
Dennis also supplied the American redwood they'll use on the window frames. But that was before he knew how they were going to treat it.
Look at it now, though, Dennis. How much better does that look? So we'll get a larger torch so it doesn't, so it's a bit more
larger
even.
torch.
A bigger
It's
torch.
like a panel beater getting a larger hammer, isn't it? I can't believe it.
Deep, real deep. See, this gets
But you know what? What they've done here, they've taken a micron off the surface of this timber, and in 10 years or 100 years, it can be turned back into that again with a bit of sandpaper. The beauty of what you're passionate about is still there.
So if your great-grandchildren become sculptors and take over this residence, and they have an equally poor aesthetic sensibility as yourself, they can return.
They can bring it back for you. Make Grandpa turn in his grave happily.
After all their fun, they are now reaching the pointy end, a time for final realisations, where it's less invention and more seeing if and how all these developed ideas can happily fit together.
Now, originally, we were going to have concrete floor and line the ceiling with ply, which we've done as well, but do a better job, and that would have been the finished thing. So initially the concept, but as I've been seduced by the project, and Chris has nibbled away at my bohemian resolution, this is the result.
The massive glass panels that will play a major part in the moving elements of this house are probably the most cohesive material to date. But getting them in means lifting them over the entire house, something Ben and Chris have wisely left to the professionals.
Is that what you wanted, bro?
It's exactly what I wanted. It's so sharp and the mullions just disappear.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's a completely different material. But language now, the building's changed its face.
So much sharper.
Yeah.
But it actually makes concrete blocks better as well. I've been whipping around taking photos of all the intersections because it's just, the blocks improved because of it.
Why did we ever consider doing this part ourselves?
Yeah, we thought about doing it ourselves for a while. And now, as soon as they were putting that front window in, I was like, thank God. We would have definitely screwed that up.
The installation of the windows marks the beginning of the end of the project. Now sealed from the weather, it's time to finish the simple pallet that will dress the interior. A space that Ben now finds himself spending a large amount of time in, even when not building. It's given him his first glimpse of what life might be like here, which right now, unfortunately, is far from perfect.
So these boards that went through, that are sitting out there now, they cupped and they were bowing down. They were about here at the end of the broom is. So they just pushed together, and this green is mould, and I have no idea where that water's coming from, and it's damaged the floor underneath. This is cupped now. You can feel the texture. It's changed. The gaps have opened up. That was all perfect. It's just gets you water damage, really. Gets you. But more than that, it's the house, you know, a leaking roof. It hurts. It hurts your soul. You can't. It's new. It should. Oh, must have got it wrong. Somewhere there's a detail. It doesn't work.
The pursuit of simplistic modernist lines means hidden guttering and a low-pitched roof. But these sleek, flat lines do come with the ever-present peril of leaking.
It doesn't feel good when you're cutting your ceiling out. It really demoralises you.
Yeah. Okay.
I can't move forward on anything else.
Well,
It takes time.
Yeah.
And that's priority. You have to fix a leaky roof.
Yeah. But just the emotion that you attach to it. Like Mum's. Yeah. Bathroom looks good.
No, it doesn't. Look at that shower.
What do you mean?
Look at it. It's horrible. It's a horrible space here. This, I've got to put glass through there.
No, we'll just put a light in there.
Why would you
leave it like this.
It's because it's what it's about. Like, that's about light, that's about dark. You don't just have everything feeling the same and ubiquitous. Like, it's just not...
The original design was that. There's
Yeah, to have a
and light
window through
here.
there.
But I think not to have passive drying, solar drying of this space makes it a really horrible space. This is just wet, cold concrete. Try and sell it to me, because I'm ready to punch a hole here about that size. That can be a door in the brass that opens. Why just make a horrible space for the experience? You've got to live in it. It's horrible. It's a...
You've obviously attached emotion to a lot of things. And I'm gonna go have a coffee and then we'll talk about it.
That went well. It's not about a place for me. It's not about a building that I like at all. It's not a, oh, yeah, that could work. Oh, why don't we do the brass thing? And then you can have it either way. It's like I'm somehow missing the whole idea of the architecture. Righto. Yeah.
It's hard to know whether it's Chris preserving the purity of his design or Ben being over-experiments and wanting something predictable. But the dynamic between these two brothers was always a unique building relationship. Chris has been given so much free rein in this project, but inevitably there is a point in that generosity where the elastic is quite stretched, and this might just be that point.
I guess we were talking about it when he was upset about some other things, and he was kind of assessing it in the condition it is now rather than, you know, what it's going to be. And I think he probably had an ideal of what a bathroom should be and maybe not what it could be, which is completely understandable. But it reaches a point where there's only a certain amount of energy left. And I think to push that any harder would damage that relationship. Don't want that. It's just architecture thing, really.
As projects go, Ben and Chris's labour of love has to be one of the most adventurous I've ever followed. From the beginning, it's all been a total experiment. At its heart, two brothers getting their hands dirty, whilst trying to find a balance that satisfied their very different personalities. It's a process that came with major differences of opinion. So now Ben's been living at the house full-time for a few months. It's even more exciting to see what the new building at the old sawmill actually looks like. And it doesn't disappoint. Somehow, they've subtly hidden away on the edge of the dam a house made of 1-ton concrete blocks.
Hi, Ben.
Hey, Peter.
How you going? Chris.
Hey, Peter.
The dynamic duo. Still in tow, which is good to see. Yeah. Congratulations. Looks absolutely fabulous.
Yeah, the landscaping really brought it up.
And you got the landscaping done, which I'm super impressed with.
Well, there's some nice details. Do you want to see?
If the door's any hint, there's a bit coming my way.
Definitely.
Let's go.
Let's check it out.
What Ben and Chris have created here is a triumph. It's a sort of modernism offset with purposefully degraded and textural finishes. Raw and roughly hewn materials echo the old sawmill, but are used in such a way that retains great clarity throughout. A polarity that embodies the very personalities that created it.
There's a lot of timber.
Yeah, it's a sawmill.
Of course it is. And that's the connection with this place. Fantastic. And Chris, you've run all the boards longitudinally.
Yeah, just to really accentuate the space, just because it is just one room, we wanted to really drag it out.
Wow. Yeah. And doesn't it go well with your concrete blocks? The textural change.
Both just very basic materials, so they're in harmony because they're just doing what they are. You know, they're not trying to
Just raw.
be something.
Yeah. And what about this? This is unbelievably beautiful. Perfect, imperfect.
Yeah.
You guys have been dicking around with this.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Well, the brass looks a luscious or semi-expensive material. You don't expect it, particularly in this setting.
We do associate it with that industrial era of ships and it was used a lot in the sawmill for shimming and you know, machined elements because it's a very stable material.
So incorporating all this, is that pushed your budget? And what was the final spend?
I'm not very good at my bookwork, but it's less than 250,000. But I haven't paid myself.
For the whole house?
Yeah. You know, 50 grand of that would be R&D.
Yeah.
Definitely. And the time, probably a quarter of the build has been R&D. And that is what you do. You invest in yourself as designers and makers. You're
Very good
investing.
point.
So it's not, you know, to think, oh, you can get this house or you can, you know, built that house for that money. The life value it gives you is a different story. So.
Research and development might also be called trial and error. But it's that very approach that has undeniably enhanced that life value. Ben has satisfied a deep-seated desire to make his own house, and in so doing has given architect Chris enviable free rein on his first major commission. The result is something that will have immeasurable impact on both their lives, not to mention a house brimming with innovation.
1 tonne.
The whole wall?
9 metres by 3 metres. Every bit's custom. Every bit. It could have been done a lot easier.
And a lot cheaper.
That is
Lesson learned.
quite incredible.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness, look at that glass. And it's almost double the size of your house.
Exactly.
Your house is what, 100 squares? 100 square metres, rather?
Yeah.
So, and this is kind of the same area almost again.
Try the top button. There's 2 switches. The top one.
You're not going to tell me the roof comes off the house.
Almost.
Which way do I turn it, right or left? Clockwise?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness me. It's like a ship going out to sea.
Yeah.
My God, the whole damn roof's going. That is extraordinary.
Yeah.
It's big, isn't it? 14 metres long, and it rolls.
So I let it go before it takes the end wall out?
Stop. About there. Yeah.
It is actually a battering ram.
Hasn't quite got the micro switches down there, so...
The concrete's too high, so I have to cut.
There's a lot of moving parts to this house and no instructions anywhere.
The grunts and groans of the cleverly hidden mechanisms show it might still be a work in progress. But it is remarkable engineering, and it's all from scratch.
I suppose it goes hand in hand with what's behind us, which is the whole scale of everything.
Yeah.
So you couldn't put a normal 800 wide door in, could you?
No.
It had to be a big moving part. The whole roof had
And
to
that's
come
not
off.
fun either. Like 800 doors, not fun. Like doing something that's kind of ridiculous. It is ridiculous, but it's exactly what we're.
Well, we wouldn't have. Yeah, we wouldn't have done something normal. Like it's not interesting enough to bother.
Yeah.
It's got to be a challenge, and then through that.
You learn something.
Yeah.
And we have learned a lot.
Engineering is, after all, problem solving. And this piece of ingenuity now allows this one-bedroom abode to be completely transformed in moments, configured to suit the season or Ben's mood. This entire design is searching for solutions to maximise what they have, even if some did take a little more work than others.
Certainly intimate in here.
Yeah, Chris wanted all the surfaces to be contained in the plan, and I've struggled with it because this used to be quite dark. So we argued, and I got a window.
Did you feel claustrophobic in here?
Well, Chris wanted it to be at the focus of this window, but
I like sun drying out the bathroom and the shower, so it's not as much of a view. It is a little bit pervy because you can check out who's in bed and they can watch, you know, it's nice like that.
Yeah.
But just the light drying out the room, there's this, what, you know, for a wet space, I think that's a really essential quality of the living of a house. Have a look from that side.
Oh, there you are.
See? So the sun comes in and dries it out for me.
But
And I
doesn't
get-
it need ventilation, Ben? Shouldn't this open?
It could.
This house might not be perfect, but there's plenty to like. There's a lot packed into this 100 square metres. And it's enriched by the fact that these two refuse to ever take the easy path.
It's nice, isn't it? It's so rewarding doing stuff by yourself. I mean, you don't get the finish that a craftsman would, but you definitely get feedback, like tactile feedback that you never do when you're just sitting in an office. And it's something that...
It makes you a better designer.
Yeah.
You learn from the material. There's knowledge that can only come through the hands. You can imagine all you like, but
To be fair, though, you've got a particularly a particular set of skills and a facility here that enables you to do that. Not everyone can drive a forklift, a backhoe, and have a big brake press to fold steel.
Yeah,
So
and
you can
be
do that.
arrogant enough to take on those, you know, assume those roles. It's like, but a chef doesn't stop cutting carrots, you know, to make ice cream and go, well, I'm an ice cream maker now, I don't do carrots. So anyway, it's not that hard. Building is really not that hard.
It's hard to do really
It's
well.
monotonous. It's hard to do really well, and we have learnt a huge respect for builders. Absolutely, you know, respect. But if you can ride a bicycle, like, you really can build a house, you know? OK, we're not all going to be Cadell Evans, but you can ride it. You know, you just undertake the process and you get there.
It might be easy to say if you are, like Ben, an accomplished maker, and your brother is an architect. But in essence, he is right. At its heart, this is an incredibly simple structure. This place has only been complicated because Ben and Chris wanted it to be.
I feel a lot of what architecture has to offer the world transcends the
dollar value.
Yeah, absolutely, because you can build a really small, functional building. This is small. Oh, I like to think it's functional. But the quality of life...
It's missing a bedroom.
The quality of life, I mean, how do you...
And possibly a bathroom, sorry.
I'm going to shut up.
You know, something quite extraordinary has happened here. Something quite rare. And that's the freedom to create something completely original. Two creative minds unleashed, challenging every single notion of design and assembly. Processes which, when combined with their joy of doing, have made something utterly personal and a whole lot of fun. I think this is a very exciting building, seemingly simple, but crammed full of complex genius. It shows what can happen when you embrace invention. It shows what happens when you dare to explore.